So basically, when it comes to both like the pricing delivery model as well as the capabilities, I think they kind of go hand in hand, because one thing that we find in the industry, and again, just like speaking from my experience on the other side of things, like hiring CROs and whatnot, is the incentive model is like fundamentally broken in a lot of ways, in that effectively the studies keep getting more costly, there are more overruns, there are more delays year over year, and it doesn't seem like that trend is being bucked at all. And that's mostly because like the longer these studies go, the more cumbersome they become, the more money the CRO will make per study.
Welcome to Future Fuzz, the digital marketing podcast.
Welcome into Future Fuzz, the digital marketing podcast. I'm Vince Quinn, and today we're talking about counter positioning. And joining us for that conversation is Shawn Malloy. Now, Shawn is the VP of Marketing at Lindus Health. And Shawn, welcome to Future Fuzz.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Vince.
So first off, just give people a little bit of a background about what Lindus Health is, and looking at you guys, by the way, seeing that you're mentioned as the anti-CRO. So, you know, for some people who aren't as educated in the space, they might hear that and go, gasp, anti-chief revenue officer. No, that's not what this is. So yeah, just give people a little bit of a background of, again, Lindus Health and what you guys do.
Totally, yeah, happy to. So in our industry, CRO stands for Clinical Research Organization or Contract Research Organization. Basically, more or less, these are sort of companies that run clinical trials on behalf of sponsors. Think of sponsors as, you know, pharmaceutical companies, medical device companies that need to run a clinical study with humans in order to get approval for their products to go on the market. So it's pretty common in this industry that these organizations are built that have expertise and capabilities to run clinical trials on a very large scale, that are used to working with regulatory agencies and basically helping these companies get products from their lab through to human clinical trials and eventually approval and on the market.
Yeah, so I mean, for a CRO to be that kind of business then, and for you guys to make the decision to be the anti-CRO, I mean, what is the thought process of that? And on some degree, what does that mean?
Yeah, so for a little bit of history, basically in this industry, clinical research organizations, kind of came about many decades ago. And I think like one of the unfortunate things, and, you can sort of like ask people generally in the industry or even do like an NPS score, so to speak, but there's like a pretty low view of CROs in general and their ability to please customers, service, like clinical trials at a level that's sort of commensurate with the innovations in the actual technology itself that they are putting into the clinical trials. We typically think of, the drug markets, the new cures for rare genetic diseases, or new devices coming to market that are able to, cure patients of depression and all other sorts of, debilitating conditions in different manners that are like new, novel, unique, and very interesting. But what's sort of bizarre that's happened is the industry that actually supports those clinical trials being conducted has not followed the same innovation curve as the actual products going into the market. So, I'll speak from experience myself. I predominantly worked in large pharmaceutical companies on the pivotal studies to put these products into the final human clinical trials, and then would therefore go to market. And it was always sort of astounding that we sort of just got used to a way of doing things that had been the same for decades and decades, versus taking, the innovation sort of curve that we've had with the new products that we're introducing, as I mentioned before, it could be anything from like gene therapies, RNA therapies, all of these types of new therapies and modalities that never existed before. But we're doing the clinical research more or less the same way that we've been doing for 50 years. And so more or less like the positioning of Lindus Health is we want to take that same type of innovation and instill it into the clinical trial processes, because really like those new and novel therapies deserve like new and novel techniques in order to conduct research.
Yeah, I mean, and it makes sense, I guess, from the outside perspective of like, if there's all these old and stodgy businesses that haven't evolved and there's only a few of them in the market and they haven't had the reason to change and haven't had that kind of competition. Like I think of, so literally this morning as we record, I had my internet service provider, one of the major internet service providers in America, come to my house and service the house. Now, the entire process to get them here, an absolute nightmare. The customer service experience, one of the worst things you've ever seen. I'm getting bounced around all these different bots and 3 different people, and they say they're going to show up, and they don't show up. I'm not bitter. I'm not bitter. But they finally get here, and it's a relief because it's been such a process just to get them to show up, let alone whether or not they actually fix the thing. And when you have that kind of position, you can have customer service like that. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So like it's one of the right. So it's like it's refreshing for this sense of like, okay, the industry needs to be shaken up. We can come in this way. We're going to attack this way of doing business that's been done. And I think that's one of the fun things about this just anti-position in general, because like it's you know, you get to do 2 things, which is one, you can attack the status quo, which is great, and doing that in a very like direct way. But then the other thing is you get to preach vision. You know, like it allows you to say like, hey, there's problems with all this stuff and it's bad, but it's not just complaining for the sake of complaining. Essentially, it's like, or attacking to attack. It's like, hey, these are bad, and so here's where it should be, and here's where it's going, and this is what we believe. Like you get to almost put a mission behind it, and like what a fun place to be.
100%. Yeah, it's kind of interesting because like you see this in industries where they typically suffer from like very low competition, more or less like needs being served and people just getting used to the way of doing things, and where there's sort of been consolidation and whatnot. And when you think about the options that are out there, they're just like not too different. There's not like much differentiation. And so effectively, if those industries are still making money and their revenues continue to increase and increase, what incentives do they have to actually do better? And that's it just in basic economics, when like competition comes in and undercuts them in terms of pricing, and then also just like provide something that is more uniquely positioned or differentiated, then that forces the rest of the industry to start to change and adapt. But unfortunately, yeah, like I think I mentioned before, if you just like took an NPS average of like specific types of industries, you would see this same sort of behavior taking place in the industry, where the NPS across all sort of like laterals is just very low. It's just the customer service is bad. The general innovation, adoption, like nimbleness is just also bad. And so that's where these types of challenger brands or like anti-positionings tend to work well, or, when a disruptor wants to come in and sort of just like take advantage of that customer connotation, an average like very low NPS score, and try to flip it on its head and say like, we shouldn't just accept the status quo anymore in this industry, and we should try to like really push the bounds, and we can do a lot better than this.
Yeah. So what does it look like then? I mean, because I would expect there's a lot of education that has to go into that then when you're talking about this kind of challenger brand, right? So like what kinds of things are you guys doing to educate people about what Lindus Health is versus everybody else in the industry?
Yeah, it's a good question. So basically, when it comes to both like the pricing delivery model as well as the capabilities, I think they kind of go hand in hand, because one thing that we find in the industry, and again, just like speaking from my experience on the other side of things, like hiring CROs and whatnot, is the incentive model is like fundamentally broken in a lot of ways, and that effectively the studies keep getting more costly. There are more overruns. There are more delays year over year, and it doesn't seem like that trend is being bucked at all. And that's mostly because like the longer these studies go, the more cumbersome they become, the more money the CRO will make per study. That's the way that the current like pricing model works with most CROs. And so what we try to do is set up like a win-win situation where it's performance-based pricing. Essentially, like we're incentivized to run the study with the best quality data in the sort of like timeframes that the sponsors are looking for, and we, are basically like make more money or better financially incentivized if we are able to deliver within expectations, and penalized if we don't deliver within expectations. And so that's like a sort of like a fundamental piece of why I think like a lot of the customer service is pretty bad and just the overall delivery is. But then on top of that, you need the capabilities to deliver those results. It's one thing to just like incentivize it, but now it actually goes into, like what is different about the delivery. And for us, we have our own internal product engineering development team. Like it's pretty unique within a CRO. So we run our own full tech stack. With a normal CRO, there's a lot of outsourcing. You kind of have this like vendor web of, oh, I have one vendor to do this one specific part of the technology to like consent patients, and another piece of this technology to like do data management. And then I have another vendor over here that helps with recruitment. So for us, what we've basically done is vertically integrated all of that. We brought the best of those capabilities in-house. And again, because the incentives are aligned, there's not all this finger pointing that sort of goes, well, vendor A isn't doing a bad job. It's not our fault. Well, it's actually vendor C's problem. It's our problem. So essentially, we're able to streamline the processes, cut out like the different communication issues between just like a massive outsourced amalgamation of just problems, and just really like take ownership over it. So effectively, like I said, it's kind of that foundation of setting up the incentives properly, and then also like bringing the capabilities in house and making sure that they're sort of like best in class and innovative. Like we're not, for example, doing everything on paper, and we're automating processes that like clearly should be automated, like, basic notifications, things like this that a lot of people take for granted that just aren't being done as sort of like standard bearer in this industry.
Future Fuzz is sponsored by SalesSource, B2B pipeline management and sales growth for your business.
Yeah. Okay. And so from that case, I can see why it's so easy for people to see the difference for what you guys are and how everything lines up from the positioning standpoint, and to just like, truly process who you are, embrace it, and buy. So I love all of that. And like, just for you on a personal level, because it's so interesting to be in it on that trial side and like doing that kind of work, and then to switch into marketing and switch to this, this new challenger brand. So like what has that experience been like, and really how has it helped you just personally as a marketer to have been in that position before you got into this role?
For sure. Yeah. I've taken kind of like a weird path. So for some like background, I'm an engineer by training. So I did a lot of like late stage drug product development most of my early career. I mentioned I worked at a lot of these big pharmaceutical companies. Yeah, mostly working on just like how do we fine tune our products, get them ready for in clinic commercialization, et cetera. But I did work on these sort of multifaceted cross functional teams because we're getting ready to commercialize the products. We typically have somebody that is like the marketing lead for the product line, the sales lead for the product line, et cetera. And so, that you glean a lot of information about just like how this product should sort of like fit within the market. Why are we developing the product in the first place? It's serving some type of unmet need. We're uniquely positioned in this market, even though it might be like one of three drugs in a very similar space, but maybe the dosage form is just much easier for patients to take, or it's just not as intensive. It has less side effects. These were all sort of like interesting things that I sort of by diffusion pulled into, my experience in developing the products. And a big part of that was also like the clinical trial process and putting these into these studies. And so I knew eventually I wanted to like sort of transition into the commercial space. What I didn't realize was that I sort of fell into by happenstance was, after I finished my MBA, I knew I wanted to like stay in this industry. Obviously, it's an industry that I'm passionate about. Like how to actually like really fix these problems was going into more of a disruptive startup type atmosphere where I don't think I could make the same type of impact that I would doing marketing at another one of these like large pharmaceutical companies. And so, and so that's basically how I fell into it. And I'm kind of glad I did. I think that, there's a lot more change that can be affected. And you kind of see how like it really does take a challenger brand, like the brand that we've built to really just make these types of changes. Otherwise, I feel like I would just be stuck with the same frustrations I had as I was doing on the development side.
Yeah, and like what a nice thing it is to have in your back pocket as well. Like when you're talking to people that are doing this work and the kinds of potential clients that you want to have, to be like, I've been in your spot. Like I very much know this situation. Like it is interesting to cross over in that way. Cause on some level, so for me, for example, like I was in sports radio for 10 years and I was doing everything in the building. I was producing all these shows and screening
Yeah.
callers and making advertisements and editing everything and hosting shows and doing all this different stuff. And then to transition over to really a marketing strategist through content, but to be able to talk to these other people about like, yeah, well, you got to come up with topics and let's talk about some ways to do that. And when I was hosting shows and coming up with topics like, or the shows that I still host as a marketing capacity, like here's the ways that I go about it. And that relatability and trust factor that you earn so quickly because you just know what the work is like, it makes everything so much easier. Has
Yeah,
been my
100%.
experience.
Yeah, like you walk a mile in someone else's shoes, and it gives you like a lot more appreciation for, what are their problems, their challenges, their needs, and that sort of thing. Just thinking back to my early career, a lot of the best marketers that I encountered at the companies I worked with, these are former practicing physicians, former pharmacists, and also former patients. So these are people like at the top of their field that they were the ones that like experienced these problems firsthand. So they really like understood the challenges in the market. And so they were able to, like more directly translate the scientific problem statement into, how do we actually come up with a commercial strategy for this product and market it, et cetera. I just find like that type of empathy that you're able to exert is just like very important and powerful.
Yeah, it's such a great thing to have that kind of experience. And I've seen points now where different people in marketing have emphasized hiring people, like you say, and like they have experience previously doing that kind of work and now getting them on the marketing side or like a business development side to go and get these relationships because it works. So it is really cool to see all of that come together. So to take it back a little bit though, because let's say I'm in a situation, I'm listening to this and I'm thinking about getting my challenger brand out there, right? So I'm going to start to, I've got something that is going to challenge the status quo and build this new direction. What are some of the things that I should be considering, or what are some of the things that you considered as you were getting started with really announcing this kind of identity?
Yep. Yeah. I mean, the key is doing maybe like at the very beginning a bit of anecdotal market research. Like what I love doing, and we'd open maybe like initial discovery calls and whatnot with what are the like things that you hate most about working with like your previous CROs, and people's eyes just kind of like light up and they're like, oh, let me tell you, and then go on and on and on, and you kind of find where are the overlaps in those data points where you just see these themes bubble up over and over and over again. In our case, maybe it's like the recruitment timelines and the promises there always fall short, or maybe it's like the quality of the data management or the iteration on like the database just takes forever. You start to build this picture of where are the top problems that are just ubiquitous across this industry, and where people are just like so fed up, but they've also thrown their hands up in the air and just said like, but this is just what you come to expect. It doesn't really matter where I go. It's going to be the same everywhere. And that's where I think you like start to build the picture of what a challenger brand needs to look like, because you're effectively taking all these data points that you're sourcing from people who buy in this industry. They know all the different players, but this is the universal experience, and it's universally not great. And so what you want to do is take those main points, those pain points that people have, and kind of flip the script and say, well, what if we could always deliver like recruitment on time? What if we could build our own database that's far better, easier to iterate on, and just reflects like a standard that is just like much higher than we're currently used to? So just generally speaking, it always kind of starts with making sure that you validate with that industry that you're working in, what are the main pain points and where are the areas of overlap, and you want to be able to like target your brand to specifically solve those problems, and I think that kind of like sets you up for success.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. So, Shawn, before we get out here, because it's been so interesting and very much appreciate the time. So if people want to connect with you, what is the best way to do that?
Yeah, feel free to send me an email. It's Shawn at lindushealth.com, spelled SHAWN. Yeah, feel free to drop me a message or find me on LinkedIn. Happy to talk either more about, this industry or just like challenger brand positioning in general.
Great. Hey, well, Shawn, thank you so much for being a part of the show. Really enjoyed the conversation today, and we'll talk to you soon.
Awesome. Appreciate it, Vince. Take care.
Thanks for tuning in and making the choice to listen to this podcast. If you liked what you've heard today, please don't forget to subscribe.